Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our executive committee meeting taking place on Wednesday, October 25th. We're starting at 7:06 p.m. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And today's discussion is centered around how are we going to consolidate and structure our committees. And so we will start by talking about some suggestions that we have. Hopefully everybody came with your suggestions. So we'll start with Carl. Hi, Luke. We'll
I'll
start
tell you what I came up with.
Carl and Carla.
Carl and Paul. And you remember the singing group Paul and Paula? Or this is Paul and Paul? Okay.
There used to be Carl Lonzano too, so it was the
Like,
three of us. Yeah.
great. Let's get started.
Okay, everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay. We. Gotta get my cheated out. Follow correctly if I miss something.
Oh,
No, fine, thank you.
thank you.
What we did was, we left the economic development business services alone. But we may want to add veteran services to that, because every board has veteran services that kept us.
Right.
Right? And I'm sure Toba would be very helpful with that. And we merged environmental concerns with health and human services. We had land use, we left that alone, and not because it's mine, but we did it alone. And then we merged libraries and cultural affairs with youth services and education, because they relate to each other. And we moved parks and recreation with public safety. And then we left transportation and capital projects alone, and discipline alone. And nobody else shows a disciplinary committee, even though it's mandated by the borough president. So, and it doesn't meet that often, and it's as if somebody makes a complaint, so we figured we just leave it as it is, because it hardly ever meets. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you. Take that into account. George, did you want to give your suggestion?
Well, so, I mean, I wrote it down in my September, I don't know if anybody had the opportunity to read it. My suggestion is consolidating, to having 4 committees to meet the requirements that we need that are necessary for the board. We were audited by the controller's office 2 years ago, maybe. And it was, we had interpreted the requirement for a public hearing and a public meeting as being the same. We were wrong. Every community board got dinged on the head, or was in, I guess, got in trouble for it. So even though we have a public gallery session during our public meetings, and that's what our full board meeting is, it's a public meeting, it's not a public hearing. The charter states that we're supposed to have a public hearing once a month. Now, some boards have,
Sorry,
yes, sir. Some boards have opted to start the public hearing right before their public meetings, and then shut that down and then start their public meetings. I think that's it's a little extra, you know. So again, my proposal, which I've been pushing for quite some time, but, you know, for the sake of the newer board members, this is what it is. Now, I know it's not the most popular thing. And I guess I should say, for the sake of the new board members, if you don't know, I'm very direct, not, I wish Ursula was here. We had a meeting with Councilman Dinowitz the other day, and he didn't take too kindly to the comments that were made at our last full board meeting in regards to the homeless shelters, but I pointed out to him that I was just stating facts. And, you know, he has to deal with it. I say that to you. What I'm going to state now are facts. These are not interpretations by me. We've had the rule for hybrid or for virtual meetings was rescinded by, well, I'll even back up further.
Sorry, I gotta interrupt. They can't hear that well.
Sorry.
Sorry.
You gotta speak loud.
You know what?
Yeah, I was the first committee to use that new link, and you do have to use proud voice.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Can you hear us, Joan?
Okay. If you're at home, just, you know, put your speakers really, really loud. So anyway, because of the pandemic, we were allowed to meet by, the state executive order. We didn't have to meet, so we went virtual, and we went virtual for almost 2.5 years, maybe. And it was great. We didn't really have to do anything. We saved a lot of money, because we weren't paying to be in person and all this other stuff. So it was great. Then the governor did away with it, but we were still able to meet virtually because there was a mayoral. And if you recall, I think our June meeting, not this June, but like last year, June, or last year, September, we were in person.
Yes.
And then we were like, oh, the borough president's office, Tom Lacanian, borough president's office, like, oh, we made a mistake. You didn't have to be in person. You could be virtual. And then we went back to virtual. That expired in June of 2023, right before our full board meeting. It was like June 14th or something to that effect. So we had to meet virtually. And you should all understand, Judith was here the other day for her economic development committee meeting. It was only Alfredo. And, you know, Judith made a comment to me. I don't think I'm betraying any trust, but she was like, oh, this is not working for us, because it was only you two, right?
Yeah.
It was only Alfredo and Judith, and she's like, well, this is not working, we have to go back to virtual. That's not an option. The option is in person completely or hybrid. What we're doing now is hybrid. So the only alternative is we do away with the virtual, which would impact negatively on some of our board members. But in addition, you wouldn't have as many, we only have 7 people virtually right now. But for the full board meeting, I think there's a universe out there that we're reaching, that we're touching, that we wouldn't otherwise touch because they wouldn't come to see us in person. So those are the considerations. And with that, what I'm proposing is a major reduction of the committees. The first committee would be the Municipal Services Committee. Municipal Services Committee would handle anything that the city touches. Potholes, street cleaning, anything, parks, anything that there's a city agency for would come to Municipal Services. There would be an exception, which I label as 2. Or B, I'm sorry, B, as in boy. The Land Use and Housing Committee. I've actually come up with a better name. I've come up with the Planning Committee. And the Planning Committee would basically be anything that would touch housing, land use, economic development, anything, liquor licenses. We're now contending with cannabis applications. Anything that touches proposals that would impact this district, whether it's zoning changes, ULURP, or anything like that, would go to the Planning Committee. C would be the public hearings. There's some legalese here, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't pretend to be one. It is my understanding, and I may be wrong, But this is something that other district managers have flirted with. Because we're required to have a public hearing monthly, that is the opportunity for the community to come and speak. The public meeting doesn't necessarily stipulate that you have to have the community speak. We could just have a meeting. No
For
public
the full
input.
board, for the board meeting.
Yeah, just for our board members. That's it. And if the public wanted to come and speak, but again, the charter says, the charter uses very similar language when it's describing either meeting. The public meeting versus the public hearing. I mean, they use it interchangeably, and that's actually when we responded to the controller's audit, that's what we had put, that's what I had written back, was the language, you use public hearing and public meeting interchangeably, and there's no delineation between, and the charter is very vague on it anyway, to begin with. But that wasn't their interpretation. The city law department did not give us a reading. The borough president's office did not give us a reading, and I already explained how other community boards deal with this. The final thing that I'll say is, since this happened in June, we've only had, I want to say 3 or 4 meetings. We had a Parks Committee meeting where Luke was the only person here in person. He's the chair. Judith had her meeting here in person. It was only Alfredo and Judith here. And they still took votes, even though that didn't count. You're not supposed to take votes when you don't have a quorum. So, and the other thing, which this actually speaks more to governance, but it also impacts the committees. I would put more people on the committees. I would have more board members on the committees, only because right now, most of our committees, if I do a quick glance, have 4 or 5 people. You have some that have smaller amounts of people. This is our biggest committee, the executive committee. This is our biggest committee, except maybe land use might be big too.
Yeah, we got 12 people.
Yeah, so this has 14, land use has 12. I would make and the only reason I say this, to have more people and less meetings, is so that when you take it, because theoretically, as board members, you're supposed to read the stuff that we send to you. So if you get a committee report, that's what the committee is recommending. So when it comes to the full board and it requires a full board vote, we're not relitigating what happened already at the committee level. You should have read the report, whether you agreed with it or not, and then you make your judgment, you vote, and that's how, you do something. So I would increase the number of members, a significant number. I mean, I'm talking double digits, so that there's more cross sort of pollination of people knowing what's going on, rather than 5 people knowing what's going on, and then the rest of the board. We have 40, well, now we have 45 board, well, no, we have 46. Yeah, we have 4 because we just got a new board member. So when we get to committee, I'll wrap up real quick, John. By the time we get to committee, some people might not know, for example, what's going on. So if you have more people, and I think it more people also, to me, lends to a better debate during committee. More questions are raised. To me, it may not be as free flowing, but it's more impactful. I've served on boards in the past, and they were never really small boards, and I'm talking smaller organizations. You have a cross-reference of people, and that's what we would, I mean, with this, we would speak to each of you about what your interests are, what it is that you wanted to do. And again,
they're interested.
yeah, so, well, no, I mean, again, there are things that we're required to do that we're not doing. I'm trying to arrange for our next training session to be to be the district needs statement, which is something that we're supposed to do every year with city planning. And actually trying to get them to come out. They finally agreed to it, but it's been a little bit. So we just have to nail down a date now. But for me, for you guys, I wouldn't waste your time. Like we did the one Saturday. I don't want to do that. Like again in the future, I want to do it like on public hearing night. We'll have a public hearing on a training for the board members and then allow other people to have, and we can do this every month. The public hearing could be training sessions, not just for board members. I mean, because again, this is where the public is allowed to participate. But this gives us a good primer, or for you guys and for me, like, you know, you guys are getting the training and then the community can interact and say, hey, this is what we want to see. This is what we'd like to do. I think like that first one that we do with city planning would be great, in that you'd be able to hear what some of the needs are from the community members directly, which would give you an idea of like how to proceed. But anyway, I've spoken a lot, and that's just on the reduction of committees. And I guess the final point that I'll make is ultimately all community boards are small. Most of them have 2 or 3 people. Ursula and I have been doing this for a long time. Sometimes we get overwhelmed, but generally speaking, we're pretty good at this. We've been a pretty good board. But, you know, like, it breaks my heart. You know, I have a life just like you guys have a life. Many of you are still working. You're still working your 9-to-5 job. We're in Wakefield. You can't get further north than us. So, like, for you to hop on the train, to have to come here, you saw our calendar. Actually, I shouldn't have our calendar has 3 meetings almost every week. So if we held religious to that calendar, I mean, for example, this meeting not supposed to take place on a Wednesday. It's supposed to happen on a Monday. But, you know, here we are on a Wednesday doing this. I would never do that. The goal would be to also reduce the number, you would have less days on the calendar, but you would never schedule a meeting on the week of a full board meeting. Because again, it's a major, I'm asking you to be here today, and I'm asking for you to be here tomorrow. And that's rough, you know, like I got a wife, I got kids, I want to be home. I want to watch football on Thursdays, you know, like there's stuff I want to do. So that's, you know, that's it in a nutshell. It's us trying to be respectful of your time.
Yes, I've got some questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly, but what is your opposition to specifically conducting the public hearings on the same day as the general meeting?
So I come from some experience with the community board operations. I've worked for 2 community boards.
Wait, 1 second, you had a question?
Yeah.
No, he's answering the question.
It's a related thing because, and this is an interesting idea, splitting off the public hearings committee from all the other committees. And typically, most community boards have it on the full board night. And that's because from my understanding, public hearings, like we have to have a public hearing, but calling it a public hearing is irrelevant. What makes it a public hearing is whether it's noticed properly. And that is, I think, 7 days to a distribution list, to your website, and ideally in a publication, which is why a lot of land use applications get published in the city record. But it has to be 7 days in advance. And that's so that, like, if, let's say, an attorney is looking at a land use action that the community board approved, and they find, oh, we sent it out the day before the meeting, and it was only to our mailing list, which isn't considered a broad enough thing for public, or if it wasn't on our website, or if it wasn't in the public record, or city record, which is that little publication that this city operates, it wouldn't be considered a public hearing. So I'm interested in this idea of having a public hearings committee, but it might be, I mean, we're gonna have to, if we want to make an official public hearings committee, we're gonna have to publish it in the city record, put it on the website in advance, and have a meeting notice. And if you're doing that for the public hearings committee, in addition to the full board meeting, why don't you just make it a full board meeting and call it a day? So, yeah, because that way, you know, all the people that are going to be there to vote on the application, maybe a controversial application, at that community board meeting, you're already hearing, you're in the room or you're out in the virtual room and you're hearing the comments that people are
I
having.
mean, I agree with you. I just wasn't trying to say all of that to George, and I just wanted to hear why he opposes that. Because I share your thinking and reasoning.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he opposes that. I mean, yeah.
Specifically.
So, yeah. So you're back in the hot seat.
No, I'm getting the audit because it speaks to Luke's issue.
No, well, I think when you step down, so Luke and I are in agreement. He thinks it would be more efficient to conduct them during the same meeting, but your comment was, I think it's a little much. And then you went on to talk about something else. So I just was curious on what your perspective is for splitting off the general and whatever you end up calling the public portion.
So Luke is absolutely right. A public hearing has to get noted, just like our land use meetings. They have to go into the city record. The reason that you don't do it, at least in mind, what I've seen, I think Luke is wrong in that it doesn't matter what it's called. The audit specifically stated you had to have a public hearing, which has to, and again, I'm a little technical sometimes.
And it's not a committee, right? It's not a public hearing committee, that's saying. It's just a
But
public
anything
hearing.
that we do is a public meeting,
Right,
so.
but it's not a committee.
No, it would be, but it would
Well,
be,
his proposals for it to become a committee.
yes, to become a committee. The requirements for quorum on a committee or a public hearing are smaller than what the requirements are for a full board meeting. So I forget how many board members, the public hearing that we did, I forget what the land use issue was that we did in a vendor, we only needed like 9 board members. It's a very small number. The rules for public hearings are, I don't know why they're smaller, but they are. But anyway, to answer your point, the way I interpret these things, because again, this is the way the community board has been doing it for eons. Like, we call our public gallery session, and apparently that wasn't sufficient in a response from the controller's office. They were like, no, you have to have a separate public hearing meeting. So again, I don't know, like, I don't know, Luke did say that he worked for a community, but I don't know how they handled it, like, did they have it?
So I hadn't seen that audit. If you want, if you feel comfortable, you can search.
I don't just circulate this. This is from 20, yeah, this is old. I mean, this is from, I'll scan it and send it to you guys. I mean, we try to share everything. I don't.
And is there a time frame like that we say it's an hour? Can we say no?
And that's a good issue, Queenie, because if you have a public hearing, on the same day of the board meeting, it depends how much confrontation you have at the public hearing over what's being presented. And a run, say it starts at 6:30, which doesn't give people on the board enough time to get home to get here. So you have to start it at 7, and it may run to 9:30, and then you're gonna have your board meeting
Right
after
after.
that? It's unacceptable.
But the alternative, and I hear you, it's not ideal, but the alternative is that if we were to adopt George's proposal, each of us is appearing here a minimum of 3 times a month. You have general, you have public hearing.
No, that's precisely, I'm trying to avoid that.
But we still here.
No, but you have to appear in person for the general
Board
meeting.
meeting.
Well, if you are on the public hearings committee, whatever it's called, you would have to come here. But either way, so a minimum of 2 times a month.
That's already, yeah, but that's already mandated by our bylaws currently. Yes. You're required to be a committee member, and you're required to attend the full board meeting.
Yeah.
So your obligation to this board for being a board member is to.
I
That
guess my thinking is that if we at the same time increase the number of people on the respective committees, are you just saying that there are board members who are on no committees and you want to assign them? Or are you saying that there's going to be overlap because now people will be on 2 committees at least?
Listen, again, this is where we speak substantially to our board members and ask them, again, what are your interests? Are your interests, like public service, and there may be some overlap. But with 46 board members and 4 committees, that's at least 10 or 11 people per board without any overlap, without any overlap. And remember, I'm actually counting our full board meeting as a meeting, so it's really only 3 committees. So if you divide 3 into 46, I'm bad at math. Yeah, I have D, the letter D is general board meetings. Yeah, so, you would have, but again, for example, tonight, we have an executive meeting, but we have regular board members here that are not members of this committee. But that's okay, because again, all of our meetings are open to the public. So, that would be, like, again, I would do double digit, make preferably 15, and, some people are gung ho, like, about being on the board and like wanting to attend several different committees. And there may be other interests, that they have because they want to see certain things happen, that may volunteer for, I want to be on public hearing, but I want to be on the municipal services committee. But again, I wouldn't force anybody. With this, there wouldn't be.
Amended.
Yeah, there would be, maybe I used the wrong overlap incorrectly. There would be overlap in that you would have a significant number of board members at the general board meeting that would already know, as opposed to having, our economic development committee only has 5 people on it right now.
Right. I do want to get other people's opinions, if anybody else has any other suggestions. Clinton, I know you're on, Ms. Benitez, Ms. Dickerson, but anyone else here have any other suggestions?
I feel strongly that the point of the committees is for people with deep expertise and knowledge in a particular area, come back to the full board and inform them. So if you have too few committees, nobody's going to have that deep knowledge.
We don't, but even now, it's not that everybody who's assigned to those committees have a deep expertise.
But there's so much to be.
But it doesn't always work that way, right? We're lucky if it does, but it doesn't always work that way.
Just to back up Carl, I sit on 7 different boards, right? Including my own co-op. And if you are a member of the board and you don't show up when you're supposed to show up, you're gone. And you volunteer. We don't go out and pick you off the street and say you have to sit on this board.
Right.
You make an application to the board. Just recently, 2 of the hospital boards I sit on, we remove people. They apply to the board and they never showed up. So they're gone. So now we have openings. But the key is you have to follow the rules. If you don't go to a meeting 3 times in a period, you're gone. There's no excuses one way or the other, unless you were ill or something like that, you get excused.
Right.
But it's not right to have people on board and then they don't show up. You can appoint 15 people to the public hearing board. So when we have public hearings, only 10 show up.
No, we're all in agreement that that's an issue.
That's an issue. But the key is, we don't enforce our rules. 3 meetings and you're out, and that's it. You pick up the phone, you call Kara and say, hey, look, this person hasn't been here for 3 meetings. We want to remove them from the board. And she goes and tells Virginia, and she says, fine, if that's what the board wants to do, write a letter, give us the name, and we'll remove them.
Right.
You have people that just sit on a community board here, just to say, oh, I'm on a community board. Well, what the hell do they do? And zip. They don't come to any committee meetings. They miss half the board meetings. And there's no issue about removing them, we have it in the bylaws.
So I agree with everything you're saying, but I do want to get any other suggestions? I do have some myself.
So I think there are some, I think everybody is in agreement that consolidating is really good to save our time, especially when we're going back in person. So I think we're all on the same page in that we're just trying to figure out how the pieces come together. I think personally, the public hearing committee, it sounds like it's a way to, if somebody has a lot of issues with a particular thing that's before us, and we send them to a public hearing committee, it might sound like a way to them that we, don't really want to hear you at the full board, we'll just put you off to this other committee you can, complain there.
So your suggestion is that we keep it the same day as the full board meeting?
My suggestion is that, and I think we should use this time to focus on how, if the concern is our full board meetings are too long, well, the things we can do. Other community boards have 2-minute public gallery, public hearing sessions.
Well, we do that, right?
We have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay.
We're also saying that there's gonna be a certain amount of interest, like right now, let's be honest, other than the organizations that know about these happenings, we don't have that much public engagement.
And we already spent about an hour.
That is a very good point.
And I don't think we need more than 30 minutes, and if we do, we can adjust accordingly.
Let's look at the problem. What are we talking about? All right? Just like we talked about land use, and we talked about housing. And I think if you combine the two, you're not gonna get the major emphasis in respect to the problems that come up. And I'm looking at it from that standpoint. I'm not talking about when you're gonna have whatever you're gonna have. You're gonna have it when you have it. I'm looking at the problem. A lot of folks do not understand the technology when it comes to land use. When you're talking about high rises and things of that nature, Euler process, okay? But then again, the ordinary, regular homeowner, the regular person who lives in a subletted circumstance, their issues are of a different variable. And they should be dealt with from that perspective. And that's what I'm thinking. But I'm going into the problem, not so much how you're gonna do or when you're gonna do what you're gonna do. I want the community to be heard in its entirety. And that's my thought process.
So you want them separate, the land use and
I
high?
think separate but equal. You know, we need to find a way to make that equal.
But let's say we do say, all right, land use and housing.
Yeah.
You would each get the allotted time that you need.
But it's not so much the time as it lends itself to the issue. Okay? Issues are different. One magnifies the other. You know, I want to give you an example and it's difficult.
But if we're consolidating, couldn't we say the second, I'm making it up, the second Thursday of the month, we have our land use and housing, but the first part is land use, the second part is housing, or vice versa, where you each
If
get.
you want to do that, see, I'm looking at the problem. I'm not looking at what goes when it goes. I really don't care. But the problems, all right? And that's only gonna come up when the community starts voicing their concerns. Then we're gonna see things a little bit different based on whatever way we decide to go. And that needs to be taken into consideration. You know, I'm looking at somebody who moves here from wherever, okay? And now they come here and they have a problem. All right? They have a problem and they want to know, what can I do? My basement's flooded. What am I going to do? But we specialize in humor, you see? And it's like you throw me all over psychologically. There's a problem. But the community, that's where the problem would be. And that's my concern.
In getting them engaged.
Yeah, because I think it would be too widespread if if we combine.
Right now, I'm giving a look. What type of meetings are we having?
Again,
That's the issue.
yeah, I mean, look, this is the difficulty. Let's just be upfront about it because all of this, you're all committee chairs. The people who are going to vote tonight, they're all committee chairs and you're asking them to relinquish that. And that, I speak a little bit about that in my second part.
Excuse me, I'm not asking them to relinquish that.
You could be co-chairs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
I think we're just combining the time.
Right, we're not.
And not, I do want to make a point though really quickly, only because like, you know, in the interest of time. I think a lot of what we're discussing is very theoretical and academic, and we're not actually getting to the heart of what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I agree
But-
with you.
So if we look at the makeup of these various committees, if we look at the community engagement, if we look at the membership engagement, let's be honest, who's showing up? How long are these meetings running for? They're not very long. They're not getting that much engagement. So with something like, for example, public hearings, whatever we call it, or land use, if we combine it with economic development, there are mechanisms where you can adjourn to a next meeting. If it runs for 3 hours,
Right.
and you're like, okay, we're out of time today, we'll see you next month. So I'm saying that there are mechanisms to address some of maybe the more ancillary concerns that we have.
So we need to speak about that.
But I think what Beatrice is trying to accomplish is being respectful
Yeah,
of the limited amount of time that we have as volunteers.
yeah.
Because to say you have to appear for a land use meeting on this day, general on this day, economic development on this day, like, we're not getting the engagement that we want. So maybe if we merge, people can be more intentional with their time.
And maybe more interested, right?
The one thing I want to say, you can't say, well, stop it now and continue next month, because some issues have time limits. Especially land use as a time limit, when it has to be responded to.
Most issues.
Housing also,
I'm saying most of them.
and also economic development. If a guy applies for his liquor license in September, all right, to renew, and it's up in October, you can't push it back to October to make a decision on whether you're going to honor his request or deny his request.
Right.
And because it has to be then done then, so the SLA gets the letter from the board saying we're denying it or we're approving it. And since SLA is a state agency, it probably takes them 6 years to look at the letter anyhow. But the point is, we can't put it on the board that we didn't act in an appropriate amount of time
Right.
for them to get their license.
I don't think that's what she's saying, though. I think she's saying you gotta exactly, you just
Not
have to prioritize what's going on.
Yeah.
No, I'm
No, I
I'm
think
agreeing.
it's just, and I say this in my line of work, but like, I think we need to come from a place of yes, because a lot of what I'm hearing is a lot of coming from a place of no, of why we can't do some of these things. But there are answers to all of these things. You prioritize. If something is due by the end of the week, it's at the top of the agenda. The chair to go over the timing of who can talk and how much to, like, there are solutions to all of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, what we've been doing isn't working, right? And so we have to give this a try, and I think that now what we need to do, maybe, I don't know, we have like a marker, Ernst and George, that we can write on the board, so we can start kind of like seeing what matches with what.
And maybe if it's possible, we can use a meeting that requires less with a meeting that requires more. This way, so say like land use and what was the other?
Housing.
Two big ones. I have two very large
I
committees.
just, I want to ask to talk about the structure. Per chapter 70, section 2800 of the city charter, community boards are required to hold both a meeting and a public hearing each month except July and August. Each community board shall meet at least once each month within the community district and conduct at least one public hearing each month. Now, there's other stuff here this is the New York State Department of State Committee on Open Government, Open Meetings Law, Advisory Opinion 3834 defines meetings and hearings to differentiate the purpose and function of each. A meeting is different from a hearing. A meeting is generally a gathering of quorum of a public body for the purpose of discussion, deliberation, and potentially taking action within the scope of its powers and duties. A hearing is generally held to provide members of the public with an opportunity to express their views concerning a particular subject, such as proposed budget, a local law, or a matter involving land use.
More or less like a town hall. Okay.
That is, now again, this is the interpretation of the controller's office, and I will share all this with everybody. This is from 2022, I believe.
Maybe I will find suggestions, because it's actually combining both of yours. I want 3 realms, meaning 3 different branches, consolidating these groups as well as I compared what other boards have in its function. Right, so that's already taken care of the quorum issues, already taken care of the time issue of overlapping and the double dipping as well as the lack of membership. Because I think a lot of people like saw the name of like a group and was like, yes, I'm gonna go with this group, and not realizing that some of the things that they are genuinely interested in also covered from these other groups. So for me, I put environmental, parks and rec, public safety and legislative together, ed, youth, libraries, cultural affairs, health and human services and nonprofits together, because nonprofits,
Well, nonprofits, we didn't continue with,
right?
that was discontinued.
Right, say that one on.
And is there a legislative one?
Yep, legislative.
We
There was,
continued.
That was
We
that
got-
committee that
There's an ad hoc.
Yeah,
committee,
that was
but
fine.
that's not an official committee.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so we're eliminating that. And our last group, land use, housing, zone, and economics. All right, so you got your beef and potatoes right there.
Thank you. So I didn't get to say mine either, but it's in there is what you're saying. My suggestion, my suggestion,
So transportation was also a part of environmental and parks and rec.
right. So my suggestion was land use, housing, economic development, and small business. The second one, public safety, transportation, parks and recreation, and environmental. The third, health and human services, education and youth services, libraries and cultural affairs, and then our public hearings.
Exactly, I was saying.
Everybody, so I'm gonna write them down, right, and then we're gonna start now.
You know what, since we have a lot of social service issues.
Does somebody wanna write?
Oh, I just want to say.
Go for it. Yes.
We have a lot of social service issues.
It's okay.
Up here with the homeless and immigrant, I'm not gonna call them release, I'm just gonna say immigrants that are in the community and stuff. And that all, and it was all looking for housing. So that's an important, I think that social services should be added to housing.
But
Because,
health and human services, manages the social services.
oh,
Health and human services, that.
you know what? But
That's social service.
But that's more of a housing issue, because they're looking for places to place them.
Public safety? Yep, public safety. And you wanted to say something to me?
I was just gonna say that when we're looking at it, I remember just what you said, that when a lot of people looked at the organization, they were trying to see where they fit in. But a lot of times things marry into each other. And I think that we need to look more into what's gonna marry into each other. Because one point that George was saying is that a lot of it is you have a lot of members who's trying to get information, like there's only 5 here, 10 here. And in order for us to have more of a public knowledge, except for waiting to go to a bigger meeting, is to kind of jump off ideas. So even if this one person has more of an economic understanding and this other person has land use and economic, that marry, together is a bigger, that's a bigger help in the communities that we can really exercise and use. So that helps us as community members, and it also helps us the way that we go. So I think that we should look more into when we said transportation, like parks and recreational, like what goes with health. I think we need to look at it from that standpoint and not the numbers standpoint, like what is not going to take away from housing, what's not going to take away from land use. But I think land use and housing, it seems like it marries, but I know Mr. Anthony.
The question with that comes, like Carl just said,
Yeah.
the intricacies regarding things that we're not used to dealing with, like the migrants. See, that's coming into effect. There's a lot going on. Everybody wants a roof over their head. And they want to find something wrong with something or someone else so that they can get upsmanship, but it's a debate. And,
Well, so let's actually, I do want to talk about something separate, but also related. All of you have term limits now. I don't know if you're aware of this. So our first wave hits us in 2025. So those board members that have been here the longest will be gone. We will, unless the borough president does something dramatic in the next 2 years, we're going to be ravaged in our first round because a lot of our board members are here 10, 15 years.
It's not 2025. It's,
It's 27.
yeah, it's
That's
like.
the first, I thought it was 2025, it's
It's
2027.
2027. I'm not sure. You want some?
No, there are two waves to it. Not everybody gets to submit the first
In the same year, right?
in the same year. They
Yeah,
get,
like there's
Yeah.
odd year appointments.
that's something that the borough president just started doing. 1-year appointments. That's not, again, we have a lot of board members that have been here 15 plus years. They will be gone in the first round.
Well, so the way, well, I'm sorry, I don't wanna, I just wanna make sure we're like figuring this out first and then we'll continue the conversation. For those that are there virtually, if you have any questions, can you see what we wrote? Do you have any suggestions?
I don't think they would see.
Can you hear us?
No, a quick question. I can't really see it, but I want to ask: are we all agreeing right now that we're going to consolidate? That's the first thing I need to know. Are we going to consolidate
Yes.
Yes, we're working on the structure.
the structure? Okay, now, so structure. Do you think it's going to be efficient to actually?
The structure we're proposing it, well, this is what I propose, but we're gonna now merge everything.
Okay.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
Okay. Now the second thing: are we able to actually do it tonight? Because it seems like folks have different views of what should be consolidated with what. I know George put forward what he think would work best, but I hear a few people saying that certain things wouldn't work.
Yes, Wayne, we're
Um,
gonna decide tonight. The executive
Okay.
committee members are deciding tonight, so by the time we leave here, we will have a structure.
Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted to know. Okay, cool.
Yes, Colleen?
And I think she should file.
Colleen, did you want to say something?
I didn't hear exactly what the combination was.
Okay. Okay, so Queenie's gonna put it in the chat. Um,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so the first one would be land use, economic development, a small business, and housing as one. The second one, public safety, transportation, parks and recreation, and environmental. The third, health and human services, education and youth services, libraries and cultural affairs. Then we have our full board meeting, but the public hearing, that may not work, but that's a suggestion.
I have a suggestion. I think we should, let's say we were going with this structure. I think Parks and Recreation should switch with Health and Human Services.
So these have interlocked, right? So this is why we feel like this would be.
No, what I'm saying is why I thought that it should go, like why I was switching it, like why I thought that should interlock, because I thought that like with public safety and health and human services, like I thought, like a lot of these things do kind of overlap with one another, but I'm saying that the health and human services along with public safety seems like, I don't know, it seems like it should marry, and I feel like the Parks and Recreational, Education and Youth Services and the Library and Cultural Affairs sound like they should be together.
So you're saying parks and recreation should go here?
Yes, and Health and Human Services should go, should take this place, yeah, because public safety
And environment.
and environmental, they seem like they marry.
So let me just, again, I put a lot of thought into this. And the reason I say that, John and I were at DEP today, Kevin Riley had a thing today just now. And we met with DEP. DEP is supposed to give a presentation to us. It is a land use item.
Yes.
However, John does capital. This is also a capital project. That is his committee, transportation and capital. They asked for environmental. So that's 3 committees. Who takes precedent? Whose vote counts? These are things that I'm thinking of. And that's what I'm saying. Municipal services, and I'm speaking loudly so that the people on the thing can hear me. Any city service, why you lump them into one.
Yeah.
So then when somebody comes and says, oh, what are your district needs? What is this? What is that? That's how agencies come to the community board based on what the need is or what they're addressing. So technically, again, to answer DEP, I was like, oh, well, if you have a land use issue, we have a land use committee. It should just go to land use. But they were like, but I said, you know what? John works for DEP, he would have to recuse himself, but he's also the chair of the Transportation Committee and the Capital Projects Committee. This is a major capital project that they're coming, and then they just added environmental. And I was like, why are you adding environmental? Why are you requesting that? Because then that increases the number of board members that needs to be at that meeting. And are we taking votes from everybody that is required there? Again, we've been in person since June, and I mean, even today, I'm not trying to, Beatrice was like, can we meet virtually? And again, the option is in person or hybrid. That's it. There's no virtual. This is a courtesy that we're extending to people now. So that's why, again, municipal services handles everything under the sun. You have, the cops want to come and give a presentation on the neighborhood coordination officers, you go to municipal services. DEP wants to give, or sanitation wants to come and do something. And again, there's always a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of overlap, even with housing. Robert is the president of a NYCHA development, which is a housing issue, but they may come and say, oh, I want to do a presentation on smoke-free NYCHA. Where would that go?
I'm saying, I love that idea, George.
Yes.
It'll be based on the agenda. So if you have a land use issue, the land use, it will be big and bold. This is what we taking care of. Everything else is all.
And George,
I think-
your lists are basically the same, right?
George,
No, it's different because again, you're separating, because what you're trying to do is you're
No,
trying.
not my list.
I'm
just
saying,
trying to-
this list right now is trying to keep the current committees and then sort of lumping them into by like association. My list again is, it's basic, again, it's not taking the committees that we currently have, it's thinking, what do we currently get? Robert, how many meetings have you had since June?
I haven't had it. I haven't had it.
How many meetings have you had since June, Carl?
Oh, I think one, that was it.
So you're asking us to
Yeah, one.
re-envision
But
what comes before our board, and that's what I was gonna say in response to your comment. I think that we're too wed to these old committees and we're trying to force
Yes.
a circle into a square peg.
Exactly.
And so maybe we should be thinking broader, that these are the things we saw in the past, but let's broaden what comes
Well,
before them.
To speak to that, I'm sorry, Luke, I know you can patiently, I'll let you speak. To address that issue specifically, this gives you, or gives the committee more opportunities to hear from a variety of different things, because they will meet more likely than most every meeting, every month, because now they're just not doing land use. DSNY, for example, city planning wants to come and talk to us about the city of Yes and the text amendments that we have to vote on. So, that would go to the planning committee. But when DEP does come for that capital project, that's going to be January. So again, that's another opportunity. It gets easier for us to plan meetings for you.
I see that.
And again, it broadens your horizon at board members because again, you're not pigeonholed into, I'm on the libraries and cultural affairs, or I'm on education. I'm sorry, Luke, and then you.
So I really like that idea, as somebody on the Parks and Recreation Committee, I would love to make that switch, because I think when we're talking about Parks and Recreation, it's less of the hard kind of infrastructure. Oftentimes, I mean, Parks really rarely comes to the community board these days. We don't have much of a budget. And it's a lot more of volunteering for supporting Bronx River Alliance, supporting, the other parks in our district. And I'd be happy to make that switch. And also, I work for the Department of Transportation. I don't want to have to recuse myself every single meeting. So I'd personally like to make that switch as
Most parks to where to.
to the other side. Let's switch it with
Park.
health.
Parks and,
Yeah.
and Health and Human Services, right? That was the suggestion.
Yeah, that was a suggestion, but also on the bottom, because George, I remember your email and I had it saved, right? But y'all sent so many emails and I lost it. Is that possible? No, because I was ready, like, I promised you I was ready. Can we put George, can we put your reimagined on the bottom of that? Like, so we can, like, would that work? Because I don't know, because you said that it's not the same, like, your
I
idea.
wanna see it in contract.
Yeah, like you said, it's not the
Oh.
same because we're working on this and I think we're gonna lose focus on like one.
So the easiest way I think about it again is anything that the city touches, anything, there's 27, 28 city agents. Right, I'm sorry, you did that, yeah.
So if we combine the different types of committees, do we rename them?
Of course.
Yeah, that's
Or like, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, a name that will incorporate all three.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I mean, we can think about that. I mean, again, I try to be cognizant of that, yeah, Alfredo.
Yeah, I think economics should be in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's also a city agency issue, but that's from the authority. So that should be part of the municipal services.
What,
Municipal services should all,
could it also be land use too?
no.
Yeah. I mean, so let me just, yes, let me just. We're a planning board, right? You guys know what a planning board is. We're supposed to plan what the district looks like. We're supposed to have a district needs statement. So you put land use, housing. I wrote it here, would hear all items related to housing, zoning, ULURP applications, transportation, infrastructure projects, and economic development items. Because, for example, economic development is that committee only listens to mostly liquor authority, which is not a city agency, that's a state agency. But they go to the NYPD and seek assistance from the NYPD to weigh in on where these restaurants are. One of the complaints that I've had as a district manager, and maybe you guys, because you live here, is there's really not many sit-down restaurants to eat here. How do we solve that problem? Oh, when we get housing applications that have first floor vacancies for commercial interests, hey, it'd be nice if you put an Applebee's there. That is planning. That is economic development. That is when you do housing and they put the what's that supermarket that they built over there?
That's what I heard here.
Yeah.
Those three go.
I know, but Alfredo said
I
the.
was looking at it, I didn't perspective.
It's the same thing with cannabis. We got cannabis, the office of, which is another state agency, they just opened up the application process. We got five applications within like 2 weeks' time for cannabis shops. We should be sitting down and saying, we got an email today from a community board in Manhattan, and they were like, do you have an inventory of all your smoke shops? And I said, no, we don't. That's something that we should probably put together. Well, from you guys, oh, hey, there's a smoke shop where I live, like Ursula told me, like the smoke shop on, no, the reason is you catalog it. So again, you start thinking about, these are all illegal. We should go and get the sheriff's office to legalize it so that if we say yes to any cannabis shops, we got an application for Bronxwood, we got 4 for White Plains Road, 2 different locations. And we got 1 for Bronxwood. So again, when we're planning this, Bronxwood has a Catholic school on it. They have they have a public school, public high school. Where are we putting it on Bronxwood? Again, these are planning things. Again, I'd give it, and it's not, I'm not saying that I think you have to look at it, like Queenie said, don't look at it from the structure of we already have 11 or 12 or 13, 14 committees. What is it? Who's coming before us? Who's meeting? What are they meeting for?
Yeah.
And how do we solve that as a community board? And again, let me just tell you something. I'm grateful, I say it all the time that I'm here, but this is why I came here, to make this kind of change, to be more impactful so that we're more impactful as a community board. And again, you're voting against your self-interest because the reason I raised the issue about the term limits is that, for example, right now we're here, we should have term limits for board members and executive positions because the way it's going to be going forward, it's not going to be fair. We had a chair, how long was Bob the chair for?
17.
Longer than I was here.
Yeah, maybe 30 years.
Yeah.
Bill Hall was chair for how long? And he just disappeared because of the pandemic, otherwise he would still be chair. Dr. Hall, everybody knows what happened with Dr. Burke, and now we have Beatrice as our chair. So that, to be fair and fun, and to all the board members, fair to all the board members so that they get an opportunity to serve in committees and serve in executive positions, there should be term limits so that you have a change in leadership. And the people who are on executive committee should not be chairing committees, because if we're reducing the number of committees, then it would be unfair to have somebody who is both an executive officer and the chair of a committee.
It's a conflict of interest.
That's a good question. Brings up a good.
Yeah, hold on one second. He had.
I just want to make a point, George. We're not a planning board or a community advisory board. Planning boards went out in 1980 something when they redistricted all the boards in the city. When this board went from Board 13, which was a planning board, to Board 12, because they took the planning issues away from us. When this was Board 13, we got a hell of a lot of stuff done in this board. But when one minute they redistricted to line up the police precinct and the sanitation districts in with the same guidelines of Board 12, that's when this board became an advisory board. And we have very little power, and every time in a city charter comes up, they take more and more power away from the community board and the borough president. And that's why you got term limits for board members now. Because they figured within 6 years, whatever you like, they can get rid of you and let somebody else come in that has no idea what's going on in the community. So they can push crap down your throat that the community really doesn't want.
The executive committee, that going to be a separate thing from here? I'm good with this arrangement.
So we're saying this is gonna be one committee, right? And this is gonna be a second committee.
Oh, everything in this new?
I mean, are you good with this, with three?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Everybody's good with this?
Yeah.
Talene, Ms. Benitez, Clinton,
Oh, we haven't even heard from them.
can you let us know, can you see what we're doing here? Ms. Claude, are you good with this? So the first one is land use, housing, economic development, that's one committee. Public safety, transportation, environmental, a second. Health and human services, education and youth services, library, cultural affairs, parks and recreation is the third. Then we have our full board meeting with public hearing at the beginning. We'll test it out. We can always change it if it doesn't. If
But
it's not working.
this is what I'm talking about.
The thing.
Transportation should be in the first committee. Go ahead.
Clinton, you were gonna say something? Was it Clinton?
No, because I took screenshots, and I want to look at I want to look at the first one, just to compare.
But you're saying you want transportation here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, when transportation comes to us for capital projects, they're building a podium for Wakefield Village. That is going to involve DOT and putting a connection to the 241st Street Bridge.
Community
Yeah, that's like-
capital improvement.
Yeah, like those are all capital improvements. Anything, even environmental. Environmental is, how do you define environmental? Is that DEP? DEP only does capital projects.
Yeah.
Those are all DDC projects.
Robert, how do you like, housing over there?
And a lot of the DEP projects, environmental projects, I can see it.
You see it on
Yeah.
the
Base.
So they're gonna be.
Environmental.
Yeah. environmental.
Yeah.
See, now it's getting,
It's
he's not, that's not the
But this
So
is
people can
why
see it.
George was saying,
saying for his thing.
That's why.
like, we can debate back and forth.
That's why the same thing.
Right,
But
so
that's-
I'm looking at these, for example, and it doesn't matter what we call them, But let's say we go with the two groups, which is what we're looking at, if public safety goes to the other, then this would be the municipal whatever committee, city agency committee, planning committee, whatever you wanna call it, and then the second one could be like cultural and social affairs
That's it,
committee.
yeah, culture and so.
Right, like we're trying to box ourselves in.
Safety and all that.
Today?
Yeah.
Moving around, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
So it's more about the focus and not the name of the old committee.
Exactly.
The agenda, again, the agenda would dictate what about that meeting is gonna be on the form.
But that's why I said on this and not your paper, because visually, we're just looking at that. That's why I think, like, when I saw your proposal, I was like, oh, that's perfect.
With the municipality and
So this
social,
is not my-
social services.
Yeah,
This is.
I'm gonna be honest, Joan is here. And this is where I'm very direct, there's no hair on my tongue. Cultural affairs rarely meets about library issues or cultural affairs. They meet about insurance stuff, their meetings don't last very long. It's not a committee that we should meet. Again, if the committee wants to meet, if libraries wants to meet, they come to the municipal services committee because our Department of Cultural Affairs and Libraries handles that. Same thing with social services. Social
wait,
services.
you're doing the same thing that you said we shouldn't do, which is you're thinking about the old definition of.
No, I agree, but the thing is, you have, to answer your question, you still have municipal services covered in two different groupings.
But
And
you're
what I'm
also
saying,
gonna have overlap. The reason why I suggested, for example, that the second group be called, let's say, health and social services, is because if somebody comes to us and it's more of a cultural, social health issue, it doesn't matter if it falls into an old committee thing. You can have a health issue come before the board that could fall in municipal, right, Department of Health, or it could go over there. But if it has more to do, let's say, for example, with like, I don't know, educating youth on like the dangers of smoking, you wouldn't necessarily put it in the municipal committee, you might put it in the.
All of these,
no,
all
that's
of these are budget implications.
Yeah.
Each one of these on the right, these are municipal
Are they
services
all
too.
budget?
yeah, no,
So
no,
we call it municipal services, but, libraries is also municipal services. We
But
don't
it's
really-
not, you're missing my point.
no, I get you. I'm just saying.
It's not about what you call it, it's about what the focus of whoever is coming before the committee is. You can have, the NYPD could come to you and say, we have a crime issue. That's public safety arguably. They could come to you and say, there's about to be a parade in the district, and that's more of a community affairs issue. One thing has nothing to do with the other.
I'm just saying, name the
And you
committee.
can have, but I understand, but I think that we're trying to be so rigid.
Yeah.
Then you vote municipality over that's the planning committee. That's all, because again, that handles all planning stuff. Health and human social services, that would be the municipal services committee. So the only thing that I would do is, again, you're right.
I don't have to figure out what it's called. Call it planning,
Yeah.
call it municipal. I'm just,
Work on the board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, help me think.
I'm just trying
Public
to.
safety would be on the health and safety.
This meeting on the left, this committee, you guys are gonna be here till midnight.
It's not the full board. It's beyond.
That's what I was thinking, it's gonna be the all night. That first one.
We hope.
Yeah,
But they don't, that's the whole thing, that they're not meeting like that.
exactly. Thank
Okay.
you. That's my point. We don't have issues on a monthly basis where those committees have to meet. Since June, we've had 3 meetings. 3. And I forced you here on a Saturday for a training.
You did.
That's it. So,
Let's
try. Exactly. It's like, let's do,
But I can do. Let's try this out. It'll work out. Why don't we just try and see what happens? And we always can come back and change it.
Absolutely. And so
yeah.
now we need to move on to the issue of chairs and
We're
how.
going from 3 committees to 2?
Yes,
We're going from 3 to 2 now?
Yeah.
No, we still have 2 other, there's 4 there.
no,
No,
there's,
there's-
We can't see
Oh,
them.
you got full board of public hearing.
That's.
Camera needs to be pushed in or pushed out or something.
go ahead, Glenn, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The camera needs to be pushed in or pushed out. I can't see them all. I know I'm supposed to be there, but we can't see them all.
on the screen.
Can you zoom in?
No, can you zoom in or zoom out or something? Cause we can't get the whole.
Better?
The camera.
Zoom in, zoom in.
Yeah, but it's.
No,
No?
in, right there, that's good, that's good.
You need to flip the board?
That's good.
You need to flip the board?
What happened?
You see it, right?
I see it.
So can we tackle the whole public hearing, full board meeting at a later date? Do we have to tackle that tonight?
Yeah, because we're gonna make it into a fight, but hold on, Clinton, did you have a question or a suggestion?
No, I'm just trying to look it over. So municipal, that's municipal help, municipal services, right? The first one?
No, it would be planning. The names are not important, but it would be the planning committee.
Yeah, I understand the names are not important. All right. And, okay, I'm fine with this too.
Okay. Everybody,
Don't erase yet. Trying to take a
oh, that
picture.
was the title, that was just the title. We're gonna decide on what that is.
All right, okay, I'm good.
I'm not good with that. I would rather see public safety with the other side of the fence.
You wanna sit over here? With
Yeah, to the left.
to the left?
Yeah,
It's its own.
I think because of the fact that that touches everything that we're talking about, as far as housing, transportation, environment,
You're going.
and land use.
Okay, Alfredo is good with this, Ms.
Mm-hmm.
Benitez.
We're gonna get it going in 2 years,
But that's, look, this is why, but again, that's why titles are important. The reason that the first committee, land use, economic, and planning, is because it puts your brain in a different mindset. You're planning, you're thinking about zoning and stuff like that. Municipal services, it captures NYPD, sanitation, anything like that. That's what I'm saying, that that's the way I'm thinking about it.
But you're trying.
You know, like it's the planning committee, everything else is municipal services. Anything for public hearing, the reason public hearing is, I don't disagree with Carl on this, that public meetings are messy. Public hearings, I'm sorry. Public hearings are messy and that, to Luke's point, they have to be advertised. So if you're gonna do it the same day as the full board meeting, you think our full board meetings are long now.
Could we move back, could we move the time to 6:30 if we go?
Yeah, but
Don't forget, people are coming from work.
Yeah, that, I mean, 6:30.
Okay, no, I'm just trying, because we used to do that before.
Yeah.
That's right. When we had a public hearing, we did it at 6:30.
Right.
We have very few people here. We had the public hearing and everybody came in and just kind of moved.
But why couldn't they start at 7 and have the general body meeting at 7:30?
Oh, no, you can't, you have, whoever comes for public hearing has to be allowed to speak.
So then allow them to speak. It wouldn't be the first time our meeting starts late. We do that all the time.
We start,
We don't have a public hearing.
We watch that.
I say we started at 6:30, right? Either way, when we do a
Still need,
board
you
meeting.
need a number of board members here.
Quorum, right?
You can't have a public meeting, a public hearing without board members.
So this week, I'm now, Judge,
46.
46, so that's 23 plus 1.
You need a quorum.
We need 24 people.
Yeah.
How often
6:30
do
is
we
always
think that-
So 7.
How often do we think a public hearing would go beyond 30 minutes?
Well, go.
Don't ask
It goes minimum an hour. The public
And-
But
gallery
I thought that we were differentiating between public gallery and public hearing.
is the
I
same,
am.
right? Isn't it the
Wait,
same?
we're saying it's the same?
Well,
No, public gallery comes after the public hearing.
No, look,
I thought that
You know,
they were
what happened?
different, that we were gonna make
I-
space
I-
for public gallery, and the public hearing was gonna have the very discrete
At a
purpose.
public hearing, people that are impacted by whatever's going on, if they're gonna build a solar panel on their sidewalk, they have a right to speak on it.
Yeah.
And if you have great opposition, like a recent, incident that happened in the community, you know, when you're gonna have people just fascinate over and over the same thing.
or like the bike.
Especially when
Yeah.
it's economically
But how often does that happen?
Very often.
It could happen.
Honestly, it doesn't,
No.
I've said my piece.
No.
I can't make it here that early and I will not be part of the public
But
hearing
seven,
committee.
so. So if we have public hearings separately, we still have to have public gallery at the beginning of our board?
No, all.
That's the question. That still has not been answered. My interpretation is that you don't, because you have the public hearing. But to answer Queenie's question, the public hearing, you can't just say, oh, this is our public gallery session. It has to be specific. You have to be having a public hearing. As Luke noted, you have to note it. We're having a public hearing on the district needs statement. Comment.
But don't you have to do that if you have it's preceding the general meeting or on some other random day? The notice still has to be provided, so I don't understand why the notice is a sticking point. The only sticking point it sounds
It's not
like
that
is
it's a
the
sticking
timing.
point.
And we don't often have, if we're gonna have discrete issues like your notice.
Have any public hearings since I've been here?
Like one.
We have, but that's yet the audit, we got saying no. Yeah.
Instead of saying health, social services, we just say social.
That's what the title's out. Right now, we're trying to figure this out. I think we need to also ask what's happening with people that were chairs of these, right? We need to figure that out too. And then, the title, whatever we call it, we'll do that last.
But I think this is an important distinction. You're right. The only thing I can go back is what our experiences have been. The only real contentious public hearing that we ever had was for Baychester Square, which was the mall in Bay Plaza. Everybody recalls, I won't curse.
But that
What
is alone. Something like that
No,
is
but-
momentous as like a mall or some huge structure, like I'd like to think that this board would be like, oh, let's use our judgment like we did tonight because of scheduling.
Oh, no.
And make it its own separate thing.
No, but see, the public hearing, again, the way I envision what a public hearing is, again, we take the opportunity to do things that we're not doing right now. We're supposed to have a public hearing. Yes, you're right. It could be the same day as the public meeting. We would just send out 2 different notices that there would be a public hearing that started at 7 and there would be a public, but again, you're thinking, oh, we can start the public meeting at 8 o'clock. We've tried that in the past. Some of our public meetings, public hearings have gone well beyond, because again, it has to be 2 different meetings. If we're doing hybrid, we're sending out 2 different links.
Yeah, you're right.
We're notifying people in a public city record on our website, everything. Hey, this is the public meeting. If you, public hearing, this is what it's gonna be on. We're gonna have a conversation. One person might show up, 30 people might show up. To do it on the same night and say, oh, well, we're also gonna start the full board meeting at 7:30. Well, what if the board members are in the public hearing? Are they gonna leave the public hearing and all the people who still haven't commented to go to the full board meeting?
Can't do it.
So then we'll keep it as a separate meeting. I think that this community board would be blessed to have the level of engagement that I think we're all planning for. But if we want to keep it as a separate meeting, then let's.
The only public hearing that I attended was right before a full board meeting. That's it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Could we, when we have like a public hearing, could we just go by what we plan and play by ear and say, okay, yeah.
Well,
That's all you gotta do. If we have a special public hearing to handle, this application X, Y, Z, let's just have a special meeting called by the board chair to deal with just that issue. And then that's it.
We could do it. That's what we used to do. We used to have a public hearing on a specific issue. Like, I believe we're gonna have a public hearing on Monkey Lane because that's a real serious thing.
Yeah.
All right?
ULURPs all require public hearings. Now, just to address that issue. and to
Wait, let's
address-
let him finish.
Oh, good.
I was gonna say, and you took the words out of my mouth. Every time we have a ULURP, we have to have a public hearing. And it has to be done within a certain period of time.
Yep. It's what.
So, to address the issue that Carl and John speak to, this is all, again, about specific timing, and this is not gonna be at the discretion of any, I mean, you guys will come up with the calendar, but it's not like, oh, we're gonna have a public hearing on Tuesday, or we're gonna call an executive meeting on Wednesday when it's supposed to be on Monday. Like, the public hearing date's gonna be 2 weeks in advance, no meetings the week of a full board meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe no meetings, we meet on the fourth Thursday of every month with the exception of the holidays. So the second week, the second Thursday of the month is the day that I think we should have the public hearing.
Yeah.
And maybe lead up that week, nothing the first week because people go on vacation at the end of months and come back to the first. Again, these are all things. I'm a human being. I like to do things. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to be courteous of your time. That's what you have to have it. And to be more specific, every public hearing we have is going to be on something, whether we have a subject or not.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. So let's say if we're saying we have to do it once a month, we have to come up.
You have to come up with something.
So if we're doing the public hearing on a separate day, then we don't have to do the public ballot at the full board.
That's my interpretation.
We gotta find out from Kiara if that's what that means. We don't know that yet.
Well, there's nothing.
You would still want it because that's not like boards and politicians speak to the general public. So it's like at the same thing.
I think that the public gallery is.
Hold on, one at a time, let me show.
That the public gallery is a limited procedure, whereas to say the public hearing is totally different, right?
Yeah.
So the public gallery, I mean, you have more control of that, right? But the amount of persons that are speaking, the 3 minutes, whatever it is, 2 minutes, and then it's done. Yeah. Right? I think you need to be a little bit, so we need to have a little bit more control anyway of when the meetings are being like. Board members also, it's not their forum to want to speak then. You should speak at your committee meetings. Everything that a person speaks on, you don't have to latch onto it. It wastes time. Your brilliant ideas need to stay to your committee meetings, and it will make it more time sensitive for all
I
of
want
us.
to tell you, I agree
It's-
with
it's
you
more
100%.
time, Yes.
But if we do have to have this monthly, then we should take the public gallery out of the full
Yes.
board meeting if we're able to.
We're moving it.
Because when I'm looking at the minutes, it's like five or, but it's like 5 persons speaking, or 4.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot.
It needs to be a lot less.
Right, it used to be a lot more.
In terms of procedure, if an election comes, the chair can always recognize that person to speak at any time.
I prefer to stay away.
So they have their spot.
But, yeah.
They're not part of the public after, they're after.
Well, no, but the other thing that I didn't say that is also an important consideration. For example, we had the City of Yes plan text amendment. We never got the opportunity to vote on it because board members had questions when city planning gave their presentation. And they never had an opportunity. Again, meeting 2 weeks before the full board meeting and making that the public hearing allows us the opportunity to formulate those questions, send them to and then using the full board meeting as an opportunity to capture so that, you can still vote on it in a timely manner. If you're saying have the public hearing a day before something or the same day, you're missing an opportunity. So, to take a second bite out of the apple.
I actually love the idea that they present earlier in the month in case they need to come back
Yeah.
with a
Yeah, one of the- Okay, so I think we're all in agreement, right? We're gonna have 1, 2, public hearing is the 3rd, full board meeting. And then George, we're gonna find out from Kiara, the public,
Yeah.
if that can
But
be removed and if they can.
I think to Michelle's point,
I think we need it.
if you want to just keep it, just see how it goes.
For now.
Yeah.
5 persons, and it's usually, like, the trend is the same issue.
Yeah.
We don't have to belabor, there's parking we all know that the parking is here, that there's a problem.
And we'll encourage them to come to these respective,
Exactly.
and to continue the conversation. Yes, Carl.
I just want to suggest that maybe environmental should be grouped with health and human services, just because things that are bad for the environment are usually bad for humans too.
Bad because of
John, answer the question.
The answer to that is, at certain point, we're gonna have to integrate and overlap, right?
Yeah.
Just like tonight, when they asked for you to be that for environmental to come with the transportation. So the chairs will have to coordinate, or, there'll be. coordination.
Already hearing to be in the group.
Right. So we're gonna test this out.
Okay.
I propose that we keep the chairs of each committee. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Really, so,
Like,
Carl, you'll stay there, Ms. Benitez will stay there, Robert Hall will stay as chair, John will stay the chair, Carl will stay the chair, and so on.
That's fine.
That sounds good.
Wait, are we reducing the number of committees or we're just having them the
But
same
each
day?
issue, we're gonna still have the chairs
Chair.
manage that and chair that part of the issue. But are we cool with that? I'd like.
Wait,
I think that's.
I'm still not clear.
Could we do that, George? Could we, like, if the meeting is based on housing for that one committee, then.
Mr. Hall.
All for chair.
Yeah.
Oh,
Be the point person and the chair.
I know it's headaches, I know,
But let's just try it out.
the whole point of this was to consolidate the number of committees, not put them under one umbrella.
It does, put them under one night. Yeah,
Yes.
you got land use, housing, and that's all one night.
No,
This week.
no,
You have, if the topic comes up and it's a housing related thing,
Yeah.
you're gonna lead on that discussion item. And
Exactly.
after your discussion item, if there's a land use thing, you know, that, but it's all happening in the stuff.
Do you want me
So
to
let me
say it, or do you want to say it?
I'm
Do
sorry?
you want me to say it, do you?
No, go ahead.
we'll go back to the same.
Yeah, so if in consolidating, we're moving away from the very specific committees, and probably this sort of answers your point. So for example, if we had an environmental issue and it had to do with like installing the new sewage, whatever air thing, that would be one committee. If it had to do more with like, I don't know, education on an environmental issue or like some workshop thingy, it might be another. So it's more about, it's more about the purpose and the function of what's coming before the committee.
Now, let's get them chairs, please.
No, but you wouldn't have chairs plural. You would have one chair.
Yeah, we got chair.
And then if
That's-
you would do away with the chairs of the previous committee.
So
Exactly. You would only have 4 chairs, which is again why I say you have to change the governance of the board so that executive people are not the chairs of committees.
Understood.
Because it becomes inherently unfair. You can't, listen, in this office, there's only Indians. There's only Ursula and myself. You guys are the chiefs. But this is what you're trying to accomplish now, is you're gonna have too many cooks in the kitchen saying, oh, this is my issue. I'll give you a perfect example. We have Wakefield Village coming up as a land use item. That is almost 1,200 units of housing. Where is that coming? Who's gonna chair that committee? Carl or Robert?
God.
No, that's a good point, because that's a,
Good answer. God.
that project, when it
The
comes,
magnitude of that project.
there's gonna be a lot of people coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Which will last all night.
Exactly. So you
Yeah.
gotta be mindful of those things, and that's a big thing, so.
But if we let it begin our time, and we think about, maybe there's somebody.
The ego is at the
who doesn't
door.
want to be the chair.
Rocking the candle.
Maybe somebody wants to step up.
So how are we gonna do
All right, one
this?
at a time, go ahead.
Well, Carl's the chair of the land use committee, right? That's what he's been doing, that's what he's good at, not saying that nobody else.
For 50 years,
You know what I'm saying? But so, will he be the chair of all that?
What I would say, you
Is
said,
is that what you're saying?
And the chief executive answer is no, because all of that no longer exists. So this is here for the visual people like me,
Yeah.
but none of this exists anymore. That's what we're trying to communicate, right? So when this project comes before us, it's not about whether it's Carl or Robert, it's who's the point person on the committee that governs new development in the district.
she almost said what I was going to say, but I wasn't recognized, but that's okay, sorry.
Sorry, it's
But-
the lawyer in me, I can't help.
Yeah, I know, I can pick you recorder.
Let me.
What we need is a chair of each committee, 2 chairs. All right? And one, all right, one. That it concerns somebody who may have chaired a committee prior comes up. We will use the expertise of that chair to speak at that meeting. In other words, if we have an issue with bus lanes, God forbid more bike lanes, but John is the expert on it.
So are you saying that we have one chair?
One chair, and then when he does, the chair, whoever it may be, he or she will call John up and you make sure you're here because we're having a transportation issue.
But why does John need a title to have that power and influence?
Because he's the key person that's been doing it for years. I don't want some Yahoo who never dealt with transportation come in here and try to dictate to what goes on. We need people who know what's going on. Just like Bob over there. He knows housing, he's been doing it for years.
Well,
Carla's been doing environmental. So what you do, you ask them if they can attend the meeting, to make sure they're at the meeting, so they can address some issues that may come up that you can't address. Okay.
So it'd be like a lead person,
That's right.
like a lead person on each committee.
Say it, we've done a lot tonight. Tonight, we have divided into topics what our new committees will look like. Do we also have to tonight decide who the chairs of that?
Yes.
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 Move forward.
Not the chair, but the, if y'all,
I gotta go.
well,
We haven't really done much.
just, I want to address Carl's point, because actually I think that that's why term limits were voted by the city of New York for board members. All of you are equal. All of you are equal. All of you get one vote here. We have 46 votes. Yes, there are some people, Alfredo is an expediter. He knows a lot about buildings issues. Queenie is a attorney. I don't know what her area of practice is, but for argument's sake, she's a real estate
I
attorney.
think for argument's sake that I was a prosecutor for 7 years.
Yeah.
And then I've done housing for 3 years.
Exactly. So like, all of us, all of you are here because you're here to lend your voices. So regardless of what your expertise is, if you happen to have an expertise, you can come in and you can say, hey, this is my experience with X. But it's not, again, to, kowtow to the chair. We don't have to figure out tonight who the chairs are. I think the groupings are fine. I'm just saying you need 4 committees, 1 chair. That's it. You want to do co-chairs, that's the prerogative. We allow for that in our
I think
bylaws.
co-chairs is no good because you can get into an argument and part of my friend, a pissing contest. You gotta have 1 chair who can control the.
Be that lean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
But-
so today we're meeting here knowing what the new structure is. December, we don't really meet much. We have November left.
Yeah.
I propose, can we implement this in January for our January meetings? Because by then we'll have how the
Well,
year structure is.
Now, hold on. Just a technical issue. We were at our last full board meeting where we created the bylaws committee, specifically to address this issue.
There's other issues that may come up that we need to, right? Like if we go hybrid or what's gonna happen with that. So it's not just for this.
No, the bylaws have nothing to do with hybrid. We don't even have anything on our bylaws about that. But that was my interpretation of why we voted to keep the bylaws committee open for another year, to the ad hoc committee to do that. The question becomes, and like Ursula and I had this conversation, Ursula is of the belief that we have to go to bylaws. I'm of the belief that we don't have to go to bylaws because, again, there's nothing in the bylaws already state, if we're going to make a change, to answer Beatrice's question, we have to put this on the agenda for 1 month, or let's say we put it on for November's meeting. We can meet in December's meeting, but December we're not meeting, so it would have to wait until, let me just rephrase that. We meet in December, but it's not technically a full board meeting. We've always made it a holiday party. It would wait for January for a vote. So that's the process. So if we don't put it on November's agenda, then it would have to wait until January, and then we would vote on it in February.
But we could put it in November's agenda.
We could, let's do
that.
Yeah, so you can put it in November, but the question then becomes, do we then also send this to bylaws?
Yeah, bylaws is the group that actually turns what the full board votes on into a completed printable document, right? So there are certain ways it's done, certain language that's used. So there is a list of existing committees in there. So somebody is gonna have to sit there behind a computer
No, I
and
agree.
actually
Add it.
But see, that's the thing, if we create this, that's also with the implicit knowledge that we're getting rid of those committees. That we're making these four committees.
Okay. But if you go to the other community boards, they have their stuff published. And I think we need to have our stuff published too.
Yeah, we have our stuff published.
What's it, we gave it to them, I don't know.
It's not,
Yeah, we haven't.
Yeah, but we don't have it.
gave it to us, but it's on the website.
So like if you want to go to Sam's truck, other
I don't know. Yeah, we have no way near the other community.
Yeah,
It more or less looks like what we pretty much suggested, which is why I think at least is coming out as identical. They have 3 branches, and yes, it may seem like everything is grouped all into one, but it's going issue by issue pertaining to each of these things. Are we gonna cross over to certain things where it's like, oh, the educational committee wants to do something about being more environmentally conscious? Of course, that's going to happen. But that's where you work together amongst yourselves as committees. That doesn't mean that you not have one bracket that deals with this aspect of one event and the next bracket that deals with another aspect of the event. You don't have to piece it apart to make it happen.
I think we should solicit feedback with regards to who wants to be the committee chair for these committees from the full board. I don't think it's appropriate for just us executive committee members.
It's not the business, no, you don't ask the board, the chair is responsible.
I'd like to finish my point.
Yes.
My point is that we're making a lot of progress here, but there could be new voices, of people who are interested in chairing these committees who aren't in this room. I think we owe it to the full board to say, hey, at tomorrow's meeting, if you're interested in becoming a chair of either of these committees, please let us know. Please feel free to
I
participate.
tell you, most of them will be followed. You gotta know what's going on.
Everybody in this room, a chair, and by default, someone who's actively involved in the community board. So said differently, technically, if you're not in this room, you're probably not actively engaged with the community.
That's point. Yeah.
We can open it up to the general body, but like, I don't know about you all, but I don't want someone running things who barely shows up and is barely engaged.
That's when we vote, for people and we.
Okay,
basically-
I wanna, like, just, let's continue, right? This is what we're doing. We'll continue the discussion. We're gonna bring it up at the November full board
We're not
meeting.
thinking about this tomorrow.
Yes.
Oh, man.
No, wait.
Yeah, that's not what all about. I wouldn't do it tomorrow.
We don't have to make it a discussion item, just.
Just maybe that's gonna be there for the next meeting, yeah.
Right.
I think at the very least, though, we need to, even if it's just one sentence for each, come up with a very broad, overarching focus of both of these groups so that we are able to articulate what we did. Because if we just show up before anybody and we're like, this group is now these 5 committees and rattle them off, then we're just fermenting chaos. Right, for something.
Yeah.
He already has the language, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
That's all right. Georgia opens that.
so we gotta adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to
About
adjourn this.
Let's have like a whole, that's why we're getting up to that. And your,
But he sent it already. Everybody's reviewed it.
yeah, well, we should just say,
That is it, that's the focus, these are the group, this is the focus.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have minutes for this meeting, so again, this is where the board members, and again, to Luke's point, the full board will get an opportunity, you have to vote on it, so this goes to the full board for a vote.
Okay, so let's adjourn. Anyone, virtually, any last comments before we adjourn our meeting? No?
So this is Joan.
Hold on,
So
you can't leave, it's gonna vote.
So the way it's listed here, these are the names of the new committees that are consolidated?
You're the group, it's the group. Yeah, somebody put it in the chat.
there's gonna be 4 committees.
Okay. Group 3 that I see here, Health and Human Services, Education and Youth Services, and Library and Cultural Affairs.
The bottom 2 are separate, so it's full board separate from public hearing.
What do you mean by the bottom 2 are separate?
Confusing. Finish reading what she was saying before you cut in.
So one committee is focused on agencies or institutions that come before us that are focused on the development in the district. That's one group or one committee. The second committee is pretty much everything else having to do with the well-being of our district.
Public safety, trans,
Yes, broadly speaking, those are the issues that we expect will come before those groups, but it's flexible. Number 3 is the full board meeting, which everybody goes to, and then number 4 is a public hearing. Does that make sense?
so what am I looking at here where it says group 3, health and human services?
No, if you're looking at the chat, that's old. That's old.
Disregard that.
Okay, so now we're gonna,
We silence the chat.
we're gonna take a vote.
Yeah, we got to vote, I think I'm wrong.
Okay.
Who made the motion?
I made a motion.
Second.
And just anybody vote against?
No,
No.
no.
Any opposition from the
Everybody
virtual,
affirmative?
executive committee members?
No.
What's Judith and, Joan?
Judith, Joan, Clinton?
One's gotta be on camera.
No.
You gotta be on camera. If your vote is gonna count, you have to turn your camera on.
Clinton said no opposition.
So you're all a yes, Ms. Benita?
Yeah.
She fell asleep.
Oh, she's right there.
Ursula, I'm in the hospital and I can't turn the camera on because it's not picking up.
Oh, okay. So you can't.
Talene? Okay.
Yes, I'm in the hospital
Okay.
and I can't turn the camera on because it won't pick up.
What's your vote? Thank you, Talene.
Yeah.
Ms. Benitez, what's your vote?
What?
Yes.
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 Okay. Okay.
Person to get a sign-in sheet?
I got it.
We almost have to close.
I saw.
We got a motion to close.
Second.
Okay. I'm watching president, that's all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Stay here.
Yeah, good job. See you all tomorrow.
I want to see you.
That's today's.
Showtime.
Yes.
Oh, no.